Oh, actually, I'll comment on that because I'm a migrant advice worker in the same area that Liz lives, actually in Newark, and also I'm part of the campaign called Hands Off My Workday, which deals with some of the people who came out of the SOAS occupation, deals with some of the other group of people on campuses and on our tubes and so on, the migrant workers who are the cleaners and some of things like that. And actually there already is a massive assault and has been for a long time. What's now happening with lecturers in the colleges has been happening with workers in the housing departments, in the welfare benefits sections, in social workers for a whole number of years actually. And I wanted to say first, I think it's brilliant that this conference has been organised because we have to kind of try and draw the line and resist back somewhere, because the effects of what's happening in the NHS already, you can't get secondary care. If you are, there's now a special project set up by an overseas charity in East London, Médecins Sans Frontières, set up in East London to deal with the migrants who cannot get themselves registered at GPs or who go to hospitals, pregnant women in East London sometimes have no antenatal care and try to take an ambulance to A&E because A&E treatment is free, but if you're admitted to give birth normally in the maternity ward you have to pay hundreds of pounds, and they have vicious people called overseas payment officers that follow people around and they're inside hospitals that threaten to have people deported if they can't pay the costs of their operations, and the same with housing, the same with welfare benefits and so on. So I think it's really important that we try to organise and link up across the different sectors. But the only other point I wanted to make really, or 2 points. One is that alongside of the immigration controls goes an absolutely massive assault in terms of violence inside of the colleges. It isn't just Jimmy and people being killed now in the airplanes. If you think of what happened at SOAS, it was a shocking assault actually on the entire campus, and that's now happening in workplace after workplace. Twice in the last few weeks, tube cleaners have been dragged out by police from the headquarters of their cleaning companies and so on when they're brought in to check their immigration papers. So really I think it's important that we think about how to organise and how to link up. And I wanted to make one sort of practical suggestion because I do advice with migrants. I actually looked at a job at King's College and tried to apply for it, and it was about giving students immigration advice. But part of the job of the immigration advisor for students at King's College, which is a registered job, and you're not supposed to give immigration advice and then also inform on people to the Home Office, but that was inside the job description. As far as I can see, it's inside the job description of all the immigration advisors for students employed by universities and colleges. So I just wanted to make a practical suggestion really, that one thing this campaign does is get some information out to students inside their colleges to make sure that their discussions with immigration advisors in their campuses is truly confidential discussions and information, and perhaps to begin to find those people inside your campuses and argue with them, the workers who give you advice that it is a massive contradiction to be giving someone confidential immigration advice and then informing on them to the Home Office. Sorry to speak so much, I think it's important to say that.
Thank you very much. It's the point we shall return to. So 3, 4, and then 5. We'll keep going. Right.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right that we have to put the points-based system in the context of the wider attacks on immigration, the rampant and the racist rhetoric, in the context of the cuts, of the austerity. This is a classic divide and rule, isn't it? Trying to put the blame for the economic crisis onto migrants. Until June, I was an immigration advisor at Refugee and Migrant Justice. That was the biggest organisation giving advice for asylum seekers in the UK. We were closed down at 1 week's notice by the government because of cuts in legal aid funding. That's 10,000 clients that we had on our books at the moment when we closed down. Yeah, hundreds of those clients still haven't got new immigration advisors, and I believe that the government did that because they knew that RMJ was one of the few organisations that was standing up for quality legal advice, that was winning more cases than other immigration advisors were doing, and that was part of the attacks on immigrants. But, it's going down and really mission through. We see what's happening with Roma in France. I think that we can't rule out that happening in this country. The government starts to make noises about enforcing action removal against EU nationals who become destitute and so on, which they haven't really done to a great extent so far. It's going down that route, and I think we have to kind of combine with the defence of migrants in terms of the campaign against the cuts.
Thank you very much. Yep.
I'm Mark from the Address Executive, and I just wanted to talk about what we have seen in terms of racism and hierarchy of racism, because if you look around, there really has been for a number of years this argument of cultural incompatibility, the argument that, well, communities cannot coexist together well, we cannot have human rights in this or that community. But now there has been a new argument being taken up, I think around biological Sarrazin, the boss of the German Bundesbank, came out and said, well, Jewish people have a gene that makes them predisposed to earn a lot of money, and Muslims have a gene that gives them the capability to bear a lot of children. And so you kind of can see, and even the BNP we're not about to get, the manifesto that they stood on in this general elections basically said the British people are bound by ties. And so I think in the time of economic crisis and cuts, actually racism will not only take on the form of subtle racism, as we have seen before, but essentially they will be trying to divide us along lines. And my students' union, at Essex Students' Union, where I used to study, one of the Indian students who was elected international student officer couldn't even come back to the beginning of term to essentially start his term of office, start his university degree, and several other of my friends actually have been excluded from university this year. And I think we need to carry the message to the 10th of November, this campaign, actually where we're going to be going onto the street and demonstrating against education cuts, because this is a part of the wider cuts agenda.
Thank you very much. Please take notice. We'll come back to the 10th of November in a minute. There was someone at the back. Yeah, it was you, yes. Yeah. We'll just have to take a couple of more, but plenty of time later as well.
Tony Dart from Movement for Justice. I want to make two points very quickly. One is about, going back to the point about the nature and purpose of the university, but really of education altogether. How on earth is it possible for students to learn, study, develop, integrate in an environment where such an enormous proportion of them are experiencing these high levels of insecurity, are under threat of immigration raids or deportations, or are affected by the mounting atmosphere of racism? It's simply impossible. That atmosphere completely destroys any serious educational function of the universities or colleges or schools in this country. The colleges, schools, universities should be sanctuaries from that kind of racism and intimidation. Secondly, this point that I don't think has been touched on so far, is the involvement of the university leaderships in this system. And I think this is something that and I know this is in a sense campaigning, but I think we have to start thinking about this. But we know that the management at SOAS was directly involved in setting up the immigration raid that removed those cleaners, and the same at UCL and other places. But that applies to students as well, and not only to students, but to the academic staff too. The management of the universities are involved in keeping lists, in passing on information, in supplying information, in collusion with the Home Office and the UKBA. And that has to be broken. If we're able to defend our fellow students, fellow workers, we have to be able to break that collusion. That's part of making the university as a sanctuary. So I think that absolutely has to be part of the conclusions from today's conference.
Thank you very much. Just we'll take one last speaker. Definitely will be plenty of time later on, otherwise we're just going to completely run out of time. So we'll be able to speak and then we'll come back. 1 minute from the panel.
Yeah, I'm Antonia. I'm actually also from Movement for Justice as well. But it was, I mean, I agree with those points and the points being made, and I think, you know, I mean, we were basically fighting a case very recently around a student down the road from here who has been deported to Afghanistan, and there was tremendous support. There is tremendous strength in terms of students, in terms of like the people around that person, the community. Anyone who wins against deportation is always someone who has a whole community coming out and speaking up for them. That there's a side of this that we have tremendous strength on our side when we mobilise, so we have to keep doing, like we have to do that. The comment, we got some press, it was all within a week, that was all we had to fight. There was some press coverage and things like this, and on a similar point, the comment from the college was to say it would be inappropriate to comment at all on this student's case. I mean, at the same time as, you know, within 2 days, you know, 30 students were out demonstrating at the Home Office, people from his community, all of the rest, that it's inappropriate. Now that is a college management who has on its mind we're going to have other students in this situation. We don't want to be the college where there's much resistance. So we are expecting to be called on at some point by UKBA to hand over more information. We don't want to be in a position of comments. And I think that this is a similar thing at SOAS, is like, we don't want to be the place where there's much resistance. So it's up to really all of us, and I mean, or just what you touched on a little bit about what's happening from, you know, of the non-cooperation.